What's up, everyone? Mike here from The Art of Guitar, here with the 4 levels of the different kinds of guitar students I've had over the years. And I just wanted to see if you identify with any of these levels. And if you are at a lower level, don't feel bad because you can always work your way up. And then at the end, there's kind of a twist when we get to the higher levels. Stay tuned for that because it's probably not what you're going to expect. So the first level of student I seem to get sometimes act like they're being taken to guitar lessons against their will, and it's the last thing they want to do. They have no interest in music. They could care less about this piece of wood that you're holding and trying to teach them, and they're just not mentally ready for the whole concept of learning an instrument. And a lot of parents, they force their kids to take lessons for a good reason. They want them to start on some great path that can bring great things to them later in life. But sometimes a student just isn't ready for it. Some characteristics of level 1 students are that they really don't care about their instrument at all, so they treat it very poorly. I had a student who would come in and she would set the guitar down, and then as she took her jacket off, she would just let it fall to the ground. And out of habit, I would in a panic rush to save the guitar, but there's a few times where it just hit the ground. And I was so shocked that somebody would let a guitar fall to the ground like that without even giving it a second thought. She thought it was funny, and I always wondered if her parents knew that she was doing that. It was kind of strange. But anyways, it just kind of showed me that she didn't care about the instrument, and in turn, it was very difficult to teach her anything. Another student of mine came in, and she put on these fake nails on her second lesson, and they were about this long. It was crazy, and she painted them black. And I was just sat there in disbelief. I'm like, how are we supposed to play guitar when you have these crazy Elvira nails going on? And she's like, I can still play. And I was like, yeah, but you're going to learn terrible technique because you're going to have to compensate by doing all this, hand movements and everything. And she was just starting off, so teaching her theory would have bored her to death. She had no way to apply it to the instrument. So she showed up the next week, and she had the long nails again. So I talked to her parents, and I thought we resolved it. But the week after, she showed up with them again. So I basically had to say, okay, we can't do lessons anymore. And then she finally cut them. And I'm not pointing fingers because I was at level 1 for a long time. My dad bought me a guitar for Christmas one time, and it just sat in the corner of my room for years until I finally got the bug to play. And thank God that happened, but it doesn't happen for everybody. So I would say the percentage of level 1 players or students that make it to level 2 are very small, only because a lot of people quit lessons at that level and then they never come back to it because they just don't have enough of an experience to look back and go, you know what, that was kind of cool. I'm going to get into that again. And you might wonder, well, if you're starting from the beginning, aren't you level 1? No, because when you hear about level 2, you're going to understand that just as there are students that start lessons and could care less, there are students that start lessons and do care. And they're going to automatically be at level 2 in that case. So let's talk about that. So my level 2 students are, I call them the potentials. And if anyone out there watches Buffy the Vampire Slayer, they kind of took it from that. But the potentials are people that take lessons and they're not, great right away. It takes them a while to get good. But they do a good job because they do everything that I tell them to do in lessons. But that's kind of the problem, is it kind of stops there. They do everything they need to while they're here. They even act inspired and excited. But as soon as they walk out the door, it seems like their enthusiasm sort of diminishes, and they have a lot of other hobbies. That's another characteristic. So maybe they're in 5 different sports, and they play video games, and they have all this stuff going on in school. And what happens is guitar just becomes one more hobby that they have to do. So they don't really get great at it because it's really just something they do once a week for a half hour. And I've had a lot of great students that were in the potential level. We talk about music, usually they have some favorite bands and they like what they're doing as far as guitar goes, playing songs that they like. But they just don't love it enough, or they don't have the right backing motivation to push to level 3, which we'll talk about in a little while. But it's kind of cool because a lot of people that are at level 2, they like what they're doing. They usually have fun because they're learning. There's a lot of good connection happening with guitar, that if they quit, sometimes they look back and go, you know what, I was actually getting good when I applied myself, and lessons were pretty cool. Maybe I'll do it again. So there's a higher return rate on people that may have to quit lessons for a little while. They seem to want to come back when they're at level 2. The percentage of level 2 students that go to level 3 is actually pretty high, even though it's going to sound kind of low, only because it's easy to get trapped in level 2 because you feel like you're doing all the right stuff. I would say 20% of level 2 students make it to level 3. Level 3, I'm just going to call the driven, because there's just something happens and suddenly a student is excited, inspired, driven to get good at the guitar. And when this happens, suddenly the students will show up to lessons. And not only did they do what you asked them to do, but maybe they did a little bit more. Maybe they went online and found some more tab or, some more examples that they wanted to learn. And they asked more questions, which is huge. Level 2 students don't really do that. They just listen to you and follow orders. But level 3 students will actually ask you a question. Like they'll say, I know you taught me this scale, but can I do this here and here? One thing I see level 3 students do is they start to get away from their other hobbies. So let's say someone's playing basketball a lot or lots of video games. Well, they start to shrink that a little bit to make more time for the guitar. That's a great sign that you're moving into level 3 territory. And it's great to see as a guitar teacher, of course. I'm a bit biased. I'd rather have them play guitar than do other things. But it's great that whenever a student starts to do that and they see that they're aiming their focus like a laser towards one thing, how much better they can get at something. So teaching somebody that they can get good at something and head towards mastery is a huge life lesson, because even if you don't go anywhere with guitar, but you put a lot of effort into it and saw how good you got and how much fun you had and how your brain changes and all the good things that happen with it, you could use that in all different areas in life. And it's a great overall philosophy to have. So I have a couple students that have been with me for over 10 years. And the one thing that they have that a lot of level 3 students have is consistency. So they just keep coming every week. And they started off, very new to it all, and it took them a long time. But through consistency, through just a little bit each week, they've been able to get to levels to where they actually played in bands with me, because I put together a bunch of student bands and some of the bands I play with. And these students that have been with me for over 10 years, suddenly they went from practicing in their basements to playing on big stages, because their consistency made all the difference. And a huge factor that I don't want to forget to mention is that a lot of my level 3 students, my younger ones, got to level 3 because their parents either play music as well, or they just raised their kids on music. So a lot of my students have, a mom or dad that play guitar or played in band, or orchestra in school, and they're able to relate through that. So it's huge. I see this all the time with dads and daughters. So a lot of dads that play guitar, they'll bring their daughters here to learn guitar. And then when they're home, they practice together, and it really brings the family together, and it keeps them coming back, because there's just that next level of importance when not only are you trying to do well for your teacher and yourself, but also for your parents who are always there. It is possible to do it without that kind of support, but it's a little bit more difficult, because you really have to have the inner fire for that to keep it going. And luckily I had that, but I guess we'll talk about that later. And the level 4 students that I have are what I call the naturals. And these are people that walk in and they just seem to have music in their DNA. It's like they have a lineage of family members that played music or something, but they come in and they pick things up so quick. And it's a little disheartening for other students to see that, because, they're working hard practicing and seeing, results, but all of a sudden a natural comes in and they're doing what they're told to do, but they just pick it up so much quicker. Some reincarnation or something. Maybe they played guitar in a past life. It's hard to explain, but it happens. So the naturals have a couple of roadblocks in the way. One of them is it comes easy to them, so they don't feel like they really have to put a lot of time into things sometimes at home. So like a level 2 student, they'll do whatever they need to in class, and they'll ask questions like level 3 students do. But when they get home, they really don't feel like they have to do a ton of work sometimes, because it's just everything they do in class seems good. And the other roadblock is that because people are praising them already, like, oh, they already think I'm good, that motivation of sucking at something kind of goes away, because they pick it up so quick. They really don't have a ton of time hearing, well, I can't really recognize what you're playing, that phase where you play like a riff that you learned and you're all proud of it, and people are like, it doesn't really sound like anything. Then you get mad, hopefully, or inspired to get better at it. The naturals don't really have to go through that so much, because right away they start playing things and people are like, oh, you're good. And so the motivation to overcome anything kind of goes away. So that's another roadblock or downfall that the naturals can have. So that's the first kind of natural student, is the ones who are naturally good at music and guitar, but they don't really have the inspiration to work hard to get to the super high levels. Even though they might be good, they're not going to clear a certain ceiling because they already think they're there. So that's one drawback. But the other kind of natural is just lights out. It's like if somebody comes in and they already have a lot of natural ability musically and they pick up the guitar really fast and they work hard, it's just scary how fast these students get great. And they do really great things. I have a student named Justin who came in and he'd always listen to me. He was like a sponge. He asked questions. He did all the right stuff. I noticed he was picking things up really quick. He would come back to lessons the week after and he would have 5 different variations of whatever I showed him. And it got to the point where I was kind of nervous. I'm like, I'm going to run out of things to teach this kid, you know? Well, later on, he ended up joining a band and they got pretty successful. They got signed to Sony Records and they were touring the world. And it was great to see that someone who was that naturally talented, although he might argue that it wasn't natural, but I could tell that he was willing to work that hard and to do all the right things when it came to getting better. Like he didn't just rest on his laurels and go, oh, I'm good enough. You know, I can play that riff. I can play that solo. He worked extra hard, started creating, like I said, joined a band, and from there it just went crazy. So I talked about a twist at the end, and I want to give some people some hope that might feel like they're at a lower level. Hopefully they don't feel like they're stuck there, but I consider myself a level 3 student of guitar, and that's because I don't feel I was ever natural at it, and I had to work really hard to get decent at it, and still continue to work hard these days to keep pushing it higher and higher. But when I first started, I wasn't natural. I did pick things up and I worked hard, but nothing just came to me. You know, I had to work on it. I had to put a lot of time in. Remember, I talked about 10-hour-a-day practice sessions and getting so zoned in on the guitar that I'd sometimes drool on the guitar and have to like shake myself out of the trance I was in. But I realized something very important, that I was never going to be a level 4 student because, you know, I feel like you just have to be born with that. But I was able to surpass a lot of level 4 students because the ones that were level 4 naturals but lazy, the lazy naturals, they pretty much flatlined after a while. They were at a high level, but they kind of flatlined like this. Whereas I worked super hard and I had to dig my way up, and eventually it was like the tortoise and the hare, I guess, surpassed that level because of how much time and effort I put into the instrument, even just being a level 3. So I feel like because of the effort I put into being a level 3 player, that I found myself in that level 4 stratosphere, which you can do. It just takes a lifetime commitment. You'll see that in all areas. Like if you take jiu-jitsu, for example, someone who's naturally athletic and you know, they learn techniques fast, well, they might beat a lot of people and think they're good, and they are good, but they might stay at that level for life because they just don't have that work ethic behind it. Whereas someone a little bit lower than that level can surpass them if they work hard enough. But somebody who's naturally athletic and they work hard, it's hard to touch those people, man. I've tried, trust me. So hopefully this could be a general philosophy for anything you're trying to get good at. There's always going to be the level 1 students who just don't care, and there's a very little chance that they're going to move up the ladder. But there is hope. There's that 5%. Level 2, people who just do enough to get by, and sometimes they're happy with it, and that's great. 20% make it to level 3, which are the very hard-driven students who want to get good, and they'll sacrifice a lot to get there. And then you have the level 4 naturals, who kind of break into 2 different groups. I'd say the lazy ones and the ones that are inspired and that work hard. And if you are a level 4 natural, I urge you not to just rest and say, oh, I'm good, you know, I'm good enough. If you really push it, you'd really shock yourself at how far you can get with guitar. Okay, everyone, that's the 4 levels of guitar students that I've had over the last quarter century. It sounds crazy to say, but let me know what level you're at, and if you're able to break out of one and get to the next one, let us know how you did that. It'd be very interesting to hear. So, okay, guys, we'll talk to you soon. We have a ton of videos coming out. I just looked at my list. I got about 20 topics I need to cover, and so I look forward to that and another artist series. Okay, see ya.